Welcome to Caught Off Guard. I'm Jessie Zarelli, and this is a show about the moments that hit us out of nowhere and where that's usually where life gets a little interesting. Each episode, we dive into the gut decisions, chaos, intuition, and curveballs that end up rerouting us, often more authentically than any grand plan we had. You'll hear from a range of people who have all been caught off guard in their own way, and how those moments pushed them somewhere they didn't expect but ultimately needed to go. Okay, now let's get started. So I waited as long as I could to record this, which is a really bad habit of mine. Part of it was that I was consumed with other things that had timelines, like prepping for my headshots, which I had the other week, which are really great. I just got them a few days ago, and I'm really happy with them. I mean, it's a little confronting to see pictures of yourself where they're really well done, obviously, but it also shows everything in my face, and I can very much see the aging that's happening. I'm not afraid of aging, but it's a little confronting. I also love how much you can see like a change in my type from the first look I got done to the last. I got 4 different looks. The first and the last, I look like a completely different person, like not just a different actress, like parts of my facial structure even look different, which is great. But it's also weird to be like, who the hell is this? I also had a couple of auditions, and then I've been doing some monologue research for a class, which is starting in about a week. It's not that I didn't have the time to do this. It's more about the capacity. And I feel like as I start to juggle more and more on my plate at once, I'm getting better at knowing my capacity and also telling myself clearly, like, hey, you actually don't have to deal with that right now. We can put it off. I also knew that I'd been compiling a decent amount of content to cover over the last couple of weeks, and I was feeling inspiration come from a range of places. So I had like different pages of notes of things I wanted to go over. So I knew it was really just about organizing. I wasn't starting from scratch. But I am recording at the last minute. And oops, that's okay. We made it. I think a little procrastination is okay, you know? Sometimes I do try to do things way too far ahead of time, which I think comes from like a place of perfectionism, which we will talk about today. And really, I'm just sort of stressing myself out, and it's not necessary. Okay, so we've made it to March. We've got a few weeks left of, on paper winter, but who's to tell what it'll feel like the end of the month? It's snowing today, so I mean, who the hell knows when spring actually begins. But at least on paper, in a couple of weeks, we can start to say it's spring. And I feel like that alone kind of makes me feel better. But I don't want to harp on the weather too much. It is not a very interesting topic of conversation. And if you live anywhere in the Northeast, we are all on the same page that this winter has been especially brutal. So I've been doing a couple of like little things to make me happier. And one of them is I got a new spring themed duvet cover from Quince. I just got like an organic cotton gingham, like lighter spring colored duvet cover. And it's such a little thing, but I was like, you know what? I spend 7 to 9 hours of my day in my bed. It's the first thing I see when I wake up. It's the last thing I see when I go to sleep. So let me just get this. And it does make me feel a little better, to be honest. Another thing I've been doing is going for daily walks on the treadmill at my gym. I am not really a treadmill kind of girl, but I've been missing my daily walks in nature, and I haven't been able to because there's been either a ton of snow on the ground or ice. I'm someone who chooses being outdoors versus indoors whenever I'm given the option, but it's not really that great to go for a walk and have to navigate around black ice and then be stepping on all the salt on the ground, the little like crunch. It's not smooth. It's not fun. I don't like it. But I'm back to getting my daily 8 to 10,000 steps in a day, and it's been a nice little boost. I've also been spending a lot of time on skincare because, like, what else am I going to do? I whipped out my Solo Wave again. It's a little wand of red light goodness, and I use it while I'm reading before bed, some habit stacking. It's delightful, and I really feel like it makes my skin have a little bit of glow to it. I've stopped wearing as much makeup, which has been a goal of mine this year, to just keep it to eyes and a nice lip, and I've done that the last couple of weeks, and it feels really nice. My skin looks clear, and it's way less time to get ready. So yes, I have been sticking to a before bed reading routine, and I really like it. Sometimes what I read starts to seep its way into my dreams, so I have to be very, very careful about the content I'm taking in. I'm making my way through The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. It's so good. It's a very easy, very enjoyable read. Would recommend to anyone who wants to access more of their creativity. But yeah, that's like a nice, safe before bedtime read. I am still leading my group for The Artist's Way, and we just started week 8. It's so exciting. We're 3/4 of the way through. I've had this book for like 8 years, and to finally be making it through is very satisfying. I think I said this before, but there's someone in my group who has had the book for over 20 years and is finally getting through it. It's a great group of people too. I feel like I learned so much from everyone. They're very supportive, very open and honest about what they're going through. And I'm just very grateful to have cultivated a space like this. I think basically every week someone has a breakdown or a breakthrough. Sometimes multiples are happening in the same meeting. And it just shows how often we have to give very little to each other to spark inspiration and the feeling of support. It doesn't have to be like this big pull to make people feel good. You kind of like show up, listen, connect, stay open. It's great. It's also very nice for me as someone who created the group to see people making other connections within it and bonding over, the work they're going through or what they're creating. It's so sweet. When I moved back to the Hudson Valley from LA, one of the things I was kind of nervous about was community. And so for me, forming and leading all of these groups has shown me that when you don't have something you really want or need, there's always the option to go create it yourself. So yes, a reminder to you, if you're missing something, like maybe go out and create it. Maybe other people are feeling the same way. So I got to take in some art the last couple of weeks, which is great. I went to a very interesting improv show. I saw a play at Mrs. Stern Wander's The Prussian State Library. I saw Wuthering Heights, and then I also watched 56 Days on Amazon, which was, well, I love thrillers. It's a really fun thriller, but I caught on faster than I wanted to. I committed to finishing it, but halfway through there weren't really any surprises for me, which I was hoping for some like big bombs to drop, but I was too smart. I also wanted to share, if you are not aware of this, that Classpass is very much alive and well in the Hudson Valley. And I thought everybody knew, but I've mentioned it a bunch this week and people were like, oh my God, what? Classpass is here? And it is indeed here. Someone told me that there has to be something like 2 or 3 studios in a town or a city for it to be picked up by Classpass. And I think that's what's happening, is that there have been a bunch of studios who have wanted to be a part of it, and now more are applying. And so Classpass is like present in that neighborhood. But in the last 6 months, I've seen a lot pop up. I've been able to go to hot yoga, pole dancing, Pilates, CrossFit, all within Classpass. It's amazing. There's a ton of studios in Westchester. Obviously, it's more densely populated. But then there's quite a few in Orange County, a decent amount in the Fishkill, Beacon, Cold Spring, Poughkeepsie area. You'll need to do a little bit of driving. But yeah, it's nice to have, and it's allowed me to have some more variety in my workouts. It makes me very happy because I feel like I'm someone who needs a lot of variety in my day-to-day, and in the energy I take in, I can't do the same thing every day. Like I couldn't be someone, I think Jennifer Aniston had said when she was shooting Friends that she had a turkey sandwich every day for lunch. And I cannot conceive of that. I get bored very quickly. I've gone through periods where I've gone to, the same gym day after day, month after month, but I kind of burn out after a certain amount of time and I need a break, or I need to, mix it up a little bit. So this routine of like Classpass and my other gym is working very well for me. I get to have just a change day to day. Regarding caffeine, I've definitely been consuming more than I was at this time last year, but I still feel good about it. I've switched to like a low caffeine coffee, like Rise is one of the ones I'm drinking. It's probably the equivalent of like a shot of espresso or a really small cup of coffee. I mean, it is hard in the winter time. It's bad out there and I need a little help. So, I've just accepted that, I don't know, maybe I'm weaker than I was before, but that's okay. I have also been working with a dietitian for about 3 to 4 months, and it's been so helpful. It's funny how many things we think we're an expert at, and then when we put ourselves in the student mode and we allow ourselves to learn, we might surprise ourselves with like the information that we're missing. But I feel like, overall, it hasn't been mind blowing in terms of like new pieces of information, but it's been very helpful in terms of uncovering some of my habits that I wasn't really aware of, like the blind spots that we all have. I'm using a dietitian because I really want to create a healthier relationship with food in my body, and I just want to take better care of myself overall. I think back to a couple of years ago when I was really, really, really depressed, and basic self care was like that was a pull for me. I had to write a list of really simple things to do. And now that all of that is, you know, a definite, it's a guarantee, I'm getting to dig in more and more into what better and better self care looks like. And it does feel really nice to be at a place where I can work with a dietitian to like really dig into some of my habits and not perfect it, but at least find the areas that may have been causing me some problems that I didn't even really know how to address. And I can just sort of present them to someone who has more experience and can give me really good feedback. I am also still hooked on Alchemy and Beacon. It is delightful. They've added a bunch of new classes, and that sauna and steam room, man, ugh, I have savored it this winter. Just savored. It's been a lifesaver. Okay, so let's get into today's episode. It's a mix of a couple of different topics that I all tie together, but as you can see, it's really about finding joy and using Alysa Liu as the catalyst to set this off. And what's really interesting is, I always have ideas for things I want to talk about in the solo episodes and even the intro, like some things that I think I might want to share. I also started a Substack, and I've been using that for some more condensed, briefer thoughts throughout the week. But what's really interesting about this is when, Alysa Liu performed and then won the gold, it was already an idea percolating in my mind, which is this one of finding joy and kind of like letting go of perfection, having fun. So these all make sense in my ADHD brain. Hopefully they will in yours too. Or maybe by the end of this, you'll also have ADHD. Wouldn't that be exciting? I have a demi in my hair, which means every time I shampoo it, the color is a mystery. And I really like what it is. But I have to say, every time I shampoo it, I like what it is. And I want it to stay. And then it changes. And I still like it. So I guess that's a good thing. All right, Alysa Liu. Alysa Liu. Let's talk about Alysa Liu for a minute. So if you've been under a rock, Alysa Liu won the gold for women's figure skating. So she retired at 13 years old, and then she came back at 16. And she said she took a break because she felt like everything in her life related to her training was restricted and controlled, from when she practiced to how she practiced, what she wore to her diet. She said that she just lost passion for it and she didn't want to do it. She wanted to be with her friends. She wanted to have a life, balance. She went and got her driver's license. She traveled a bunch. She did like a year and a half of college. All of these things that either would have been impossible or very, very difficult to do if she was still doing her training. And then when she came back, she knew that she wanted to have more authority in her life and she wanted to have more of a say. What's interesting too is she said after her break, when she came back, her first time on the ice, she felt better. She felt stronger, more comfortable. And then obviously, as we know, a few years later, she won the gold. And I mean, you can even tell just watching her perform how confident and joyful she looks. She doesn't look nervous. She doesn't look scared. She doesn't look uneasy. She looks very, very happy. And before she did her actual performance, she was actually rehearsing on the ice. And she had said, she didn't need to win the gold. She just needed to show people what she could do. And one of the commentators said something to the effect of, well, when what that means, usually when someone says that, that's when they win the gold. So it's pretty funny to watch back and see it all happening just like minutes after. But yeah, beforehand she was rehearsing on the ice and she was like taking selfies and waving at fans and just having so much fun. I feel like if I didn't know she was about to perform, I would have watched that person and been like, oh, interesting. Is that like someone else practice? Like, who is that? I wouldn't have thought it was someone who was about to just perform in the Olympics, which is just incredible. She has this ease and this joy to her, which I feel like gets lost on a lot of artists and creatives and performers. And that's really why I wanted to use her as this example today on this topic about perfectionism and finding the joy, because she is just this incredible example of what it can mean to let go of the perfection and the control and have fun. When I think of nearly any performance I've ever done, even like really low stakes performances, I am so serious beforehand. Like, I'm not smiling, I'm not laughing. And I've been thinking about it this week, like, what the hell is that about? Yeah, I know you might be like, okay, well, Alysa Liu won the gold medal for ice skating in the Olympics. And yes, she did. And we are not all preparing for a performance where we may or may not win the gold. And most of us are not going to win the gold. But we do all have talents, and we all have things that we love to do and enjoy and are good at and are talented at. And what I hope that you'll gain from this is that it's not really about focusing on being the best ever. You get to find the thing you love while working hard at it, obviously, being diligent and learning and practicing, and you get to find enjoyment. I mean, the fact that she retired at 13, took 3 years off, decided to come back and won the gold, I think is very telling, right? She went in also not focusing on winning the gold, even saying she wasn't there to win it. She didn't need to win it, but wanting to share something that she loved so much. And I also feel like that speaks to the generosity we can experience with our art when we're making it about something else other than us and getting the attention or the validation or the approval from the outside. So when I think about her taking a break and coming back, I would imagine, like we all can, the question she was asking herself was probably something to the effect of like, am I enjoying this? Do I like this? And the answer was obviously ultimately no at that time, which is why she decided to quit. She was not enjoying it. But then she came back because deep down it was something she loved. It is something she loved. She just didn't love how she was doing it. She didn't love the process of what it was. I listened to an interview with her that came out maybe like a week or so ago, a week and a half ago. And she said, I love making mistakes. I love falling. I also love landing and doing really well. So I feel no matter what the outcome was, I was going to be cool with it. And she was speaking to how she felt right before she won the gold medal, which to me, this basically means I love the process. I love getting to do this. She said this after she performed. She wasn't thinking about the outcome. She wasn't thinking about her score. She was thinking about how, she just skated her ass off. She also mentioned how a lot of people participating in the Olympics, that is basically their end goal, that's where their focus is. And she didn't feel that for herself. She didn't feel like participating in the Olympics was a part of her like end goal. She feels like it's a thing that she did, but not like the ever-ending place to end up. And I feel like that can be really confronting for people, right? I mean, thinking about this massive thing, which by the way, she also said in terms of winning, it wasn't that hard, which is just so funny and so incredible at the same time. Like, to have this ease and detachment from it, and to also be so honest about it. Like, she must know that obviously there are people, and she says it too, right? She says that there are people who went to the Olympics with this being their big life dream. So she obviously knows that she has just accomplished something that many, many people dream of or will only dream of. And she did it. It wasn't the thing she wanted the most. She wasn't like holding on really tight. She wasn't extremely attached. And it wasn't even like the thing that she needed to accomplish, right? And to say that, to be able to say it, to feel like the confidence to say that, I feel like also says something about her of this, like, she's not caring what other people think. She's just doing and saying what's right for her. She's being very authentic. And I think that's also what's incredibly lovable about her, is that she is so authentic. But yes, I can see that like her saying all of this can be very confronting. And I feel like I've had moments of this too, of seeing people who have more hands-off energy and feeling really triggered by it because I was like clamping down. I mean, I just said how I can't even really remember a performance where I wasn't super serious about it, which is so funny. And that can even come up on a smaller scale too, of like, doing self-tapes, the ones where I'm like, okay, whatever, are the ones where casting writes back and tells my agent like, oh, we love Jessie for this. And they have me pinned, or they like call me back in for another show or something. And the ones that I feel like so much pressure on, the ones where I'm not really having fun with it, but I'm trying to make it be this thing and I'm like clamping down and like holding really tight, is often the one that people don't enjoy the most. My last booking was a really nice commercial I did in December. And when I had to do the audition, it was a live Zoom audition. So I did my self tape, and then they called me back in for what they call like a Zoom callback. And so I was on the Zoom call with a bunch of people. Only one person had their camera on. Everyone else had their camera off. There were like 10 different names. I didn't know a lot of them. Some of them weren't on even my audition. They weren't listed as like, a writer, a producer, the casting office. So I had all these names of people I don't know. I do my audition, and then I put my phone on silent, and I have to go do another audition that has like a tight time frame. And while I'm editing my tape, I look at my phone and I have all these texts and calls and emails from my manager who's like, hey, they want you to get back on the Zoom call to read for this other role. And I was like, oh my God, whoops. It was like 15 minutes later. So I rush, I go back in my email, I click on the link, I hop in. And when I hopped on, I was trying to get back in as soon as possible because I knew that they were also getting off the call at a certain time. I was sitting on my floor. So I'm holding my laptop. I'm sitting on like kneeling on the floor, holding this laptop, looking down like it's like a very unflattering view of my chin and like my neck because I wanted to sign on right away. The audition we had to move through really fast. I remember at one point the director was like, okay, now you're going to do it again, but you have a daughter, like you have your little girl and you're holding her. And I'm like, okay. And I thought I'd heard him say like, I'm holding her hand. So I do the audition and I'm holding her hand and I try and kneel down and talk to her and I kind of like shake my arm. And he goes, no, let's make her younger. You're holding her on your hip. So then I'm doing it again. I'm holding her on my hip. It's like this I'm making it sound less chaotic than it was, but it really was very chaotic. I had to like rush, change my lights. I'm not wearing the thing they wanted me to before. They wanted me to change my hair around. So I'm running around trying to find a hair clip. That's what I booked. So I had auditioned for a smaller role initially. They call me back in for a larger role, which is like one of the more main characters in the audition. That is what I booked. So it's just so funny. And it was such a reminder to me of like you being joyful and just having fun with it, which is exactly what I did. I was like, okay, got it. My daughter's 2. She's not like 6. Okay. And we were laughing in between different takes they were having me do. That's what I booked. So it's just really, really funny. But it's a good reminder too. So I feel like this has been something that I've had to combat a lot of my creative life, because if I think back to like the messaging that I got and my background and my training, it was that there's actually, I don't know why it sounds so funny to say now, but it was that there was a lot of pain and hardship associated with trying to reach the level of success or be where you want to be artistically, that it's not an easy, joyful process. And there's almost this romanticizing of it being difficult and of like the industry hardening you. And you see people come in and they're green and they're happy and they're optimistic and like, oh, what the fuck is wrong with them? And what I experienced, I felt like the people who were like that, who had this lighter energy, were looked down upon. How could they have so much excitement about this and optimism? Like, they don't know. They're naive. They were seen as not taking it seriously, which is so crazy to think about. That just think about this, you being too excited and happy about the thing you love means you're not taking it seriously. What does that mean? And to take something seriously means, I guess, you look really serious. And then I guess serious means that you look mildly unhappy about it or stressed or uptight or really focused, which ultimately I think means the opposite of joy. I feel like Alysa Liu is this great example of and is really showing us how we have been fed this lie. It's a lie that we don't have to keep believing and buying into. Oh, I mean, it's a real hit to the ego. It is for me, at least, when you realize that you have bought into something that is absolute bullshit. And I can imagine, like I said, I can imagine her saying, "Oh, it wasn't that hard." To really piss off a lot of people who have either achieved great artistic success and not allowed themselves to find joy in it and have been miserable in the process, or people who have not achieved the success and have also been miserable about it. So the antidote is to find the joy and find the fun. It's very common because this is like a very widely held belief. I think it's very common for performers and artists to find themselves like stuck in the heaviness of the process, and it can be really hard to pull yourself out of. There are so many artists who've gotten stuck there. And then from moving out of it, I think it can just be really vulnerable to find the joy again because we've kind of been conditioned to have it beaten out of us. And to find the joy means you might have to get your hopes up. And if you get your hopes up, you could get hurt. It could not work out. And when your identity is fully tied to your art in that way, you're just really setting yourself up for failure, right? You're really setting yourself up for failure. It's the same thing if like, every time you go on a date, you're saying, oh, this could be the one. And you're putting so much pressure on it instead of going out on a date and saying, okay, I'm going to meet a new person. I hope we have a good time. I hope the food is good. I hope they're nice. I hope the conversation is great. And let's see if we learn something fun from them. That's going in with this like light, detached energy. And I feel like that's when we have the best dates rather than this has to be the one. Putting so much pressure on it. And we're not even enjoying it in the process. And they're probably not going to either. So if our focus is on, making it great, wanting it to like be the thing, to shift that, I think that maybe we could be asking ourselves different questions. Like maybe we're just not asking ourselves the right questions when it comes to our art and creativity, right? So potentially a question that Alysa Liu is asking herself is, am I enjoying this? Ultimately, she decided I'm not enjoying this, which is why I want to take a break. And maybe she didn't consciously sit down and journal and say, am I enjoying this? But obviously it was coming up in her like, I don't like this. I'm not having fun. I don't want to do this anymore. So maybe we're just not asking the right questions. I think it's very common, obviously, for the focus to be on how to make this great, how to make this good. We perform and we ask, was that good? What did you think? Or we just jump to, which someone asked me once not that long ago, was that bad? And I thought, oh my God, no, we're like totally missing the point. And I do it too. That's why I'm a part of this. I'm unraveling this in real time. Maybe not in the exact real time, but I have been unraveling this. I think we completely like outsource our worth, and we have our identity so tied to this, and it's particularly dangerous if your worth is fully tied to what you create. We're not asking questions like, was this fun? Did I like it? How can I have more fun? What would make this an even better experience for me? Because we'll be led down a very different path. The goal of perfection leads us to ask questions like, am I good enough? Is this good enough? What do people think of me? Am I behind? How do I compare? Is this impressive? Are people impressed by me? Whereas if the end goal is just having fun, and having a good time and loving life. That leads to questions like, what feels alive? What excites me? What fuels me? What's interesting? What would make this more playful? What would make this lighter? And then that leads us to seek out how to do those things, which if it's about the joy, it's probably going to lead you down a path of connection, laughter, being silly, good energy, community. At least for my experience, when my goal has been on perfection, I feel this tightening, compression, smallness about me. Whereas when my goal is having fun, enjoying the process, I feel expansive and light. And I also feel like I get way more compliments, which I will get to as well. But perfection is ultimately about controlling and the end goal. And then joy, I would say, is more about expansion and the process, which is funny because if you think about I was thinking about this when I was watching the Olympics, like figure skating. Oh my God. 4+, like obviously it's most of their lives they have been practicing this sport, but say they've been actively preparing and practicing for the Olympics and training for the Olympics. 4 years, that comes down to maybe 8 minutes or less. For some of them, it's 5 minutes. It's, it could be done like that. If you're not enjoying the process, that is 4 years plus of your life. Like, even if we think about it in terms of the time that goes into it, the process is our life. The end goal in these scenarios is a snippet. It's a fucking drop in the bucket of our life. So if the focus for you even say like is still on this outside approval and you're like having a hard time shaking it, well, here's like another way to look at it that I think could be helpful, because guess what? People love being around happy people. Happy people love happy people. And even some miserable people love happy people sometimes because, they get a nice little break from their misery. So if you can't get on board with finding more joy for yourself and you're still feeling really desperate for this approval or really tied to these like perfectionist sort of tendencies that you have, well, maybe allow yourself to let in some of the joy, knowing that other people like it and gravitate towards it. And that could make them even like, what you're having to share a little bit more even. I think that you can still be excellent at something and hyper focus on perfection as long as there's some type of balance. But I also I really think that people can sense that. I used to be in an acting class with this girl who was a really wonderful actress. She was very talented. But you could tell, it was very obvious that she had a lot of self-worth issues and that she put an immense amount of pressure on herself to be excellent. I mean, to the point where if she didn't perform exactly the way she wanted, she would look like she was in a state of depression after performing. Like it would knock out the rest of the class. She wouldn't be able to talk to people. Sometimes she would kind of like, sit in the back and cry. She was a great actress, but I felt very stressed out watching her. I didn't enjoy it. I was more stressed about how she was going to be after. And I could just see all of the like self-hatred and the self-judgment and this obsession with wanting things to be perfect. And then I've been in other classes where people would go and maybe they weren't as inherently talented, which also that is just like, it's so subjective. But they were having so much more fun and they were able to take notes so much more easily from the instructor. And because they were just in this open, free space, they were able to connect with their scene partner more easily. They were able to play off of them. They were able to give us a bunch of different varieties. They weren't married to how it had to go because they weren't married to the end note. They were focused on being free and open and having an enjoyable time. And that's more fun to be around. It's more fun to watch. I think an old part of me used to think that talent mattered more than anything, but now I'm seeing that that's not necessarily the case. And honestly, this is like a pretty recent realization. I mean, we know plenty of people. We all do. Any industry, any artistic, creative field you can think of where you know of people or you know them directly who maybe they're not necessarily wonderful at the thing they do, but they bring so much joy and so much good energy to the table, and that's what pulls people in. I think we all know excellent, very talented artists who are sitting at home in their living room. No, I see that as I'm sitting at home in my living room, but this is how I want to record the podcast. But they're sitting at home in their living room. Nobody knows who they are. And they're not having a good time. And then we know people who maybe aren't as talented, but they are fucking loving life and they are out there having a great time and saying yes to things and booking, and people love working off of them and they love working with them. I have to remind myself of that a lot. Like, hey, don't get too stuck on making this right. Focus on connection and kindness, learning from the, mistakes you think you're making, or notice your growth edge, and allow both things to exist. Allow there to be space to improve, and also still let yourself enjoy it. Don't put off pleasure and happiness until I've reached this end goal, because you never get there. So I remind myself of this when I'm falling into the perfectionist trap, and how this is not even what people actually want. This is not the thing that people want. My goal is, if my goal is making the audience happy or making casting directors happy, it's not about being perfect. I think that's when people, can kind of sense that and they have an aversion to it. I don't know if I wrote it down somewhere, but I read this quote that Alysa Liu said, which was about her mistakes. And she said something like, oh, I love making mistakes and falling, and I also love when it works out. Oh, I think I might have said this before. And that's so amazing, because that just shows how she's in it to learn, and she's in it to do the whole thing. She's not in it to like get to this ending. And I don't know. I would love to get to that point of like, oh, yes, I love the mistakes I made. It's funny, though, in life, when I make mistakes, I don't really regret too many things. I can look back on lots of mistakes I've made and go, oh, I'm so happy I did that. I made that mistake because I learned so much from it. And that one little mistake taught me an entire life lesson that maybe I wouldn't have learned for like 5 more years. And I'm so glad I got to make this one mistake. So it would be nice to be able to do that with artistic projects and sort of like, take off the control of it a little bit. When the priority is on perfection, that also burns us out. It's just not sustainable. And joy and fun, they never run out. You can create more of that over and over and over again, because it also comes from a place of love. That also reminds me of my experience with ayahuasca, and how my entire goal with going into the retreat was to be able to access deeper layers of my creative self, and to be able to express myself artistically in a way I hadn't been able to before. And the person who was leading the shadow work part of the retreat said, okay, well, actually, what we want to figure out is what your blocks to love are, because love and art are the same. Oh, so beautiful. So beautiful. Maintaining a career as a performer or an artist, whatever you do, it requires it to be sustainable, right? Maintaining means it's something that can be sustained. And so I think when we hear about this burnout, or if you're someone who's experienced burnout, it's not typically from doing the things you love. It might be from doing the thing you love, but it could be the way you're doing it is not that fun. When we do things the way we love and we allow ourselves to have fun, we actually have immense amounts of energy. I can give a personal example, which was this past fall, I was very, very, very busy acting wise. I was in a really intense acting class that I took very seriously. Very seriously. I rehearsed multiple times a week with my scene partner. I rehearsed with myself to some degree almost every day. I read the play probably 5 to 10 times. And then we had the class, which is about 4-ish hours a week. On top of that class, I also booked a couple of short films. I booked a feature, a play, 2 or 3 commercials. I did a couple of film challenges. I did some play readings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I could go on. I was extremely busy for 4 months, and I was pretty shocked looking back that I was able to sustain all of that, considering how strict I had to be with my free time. But it was because I was doing something that I loved so fucking much that I had endless energy for it. And I've heard people talk about the anticipatory fear they have that if they're doing even too much of what they love, or if they dive in too much, they have this fear that they'll burn out, and they use that fear to not go in. But the burnout typically comes from a place of misalignment. It doesn't come from doing the thing you really love to do. Now, there might be aspects of the thing you love to do that is not fun. Like maybe it's the content creation stuff, or it's the sending emails, or the networking small talk stuff. But when you are doing the specific thing that you clearly love, I don't know if I believe in burnout when it comes to that. And so I think that can also be an indication for us that if you're experiencing burnout, you're probably not doing the thing you love, or maybe you're not enjoying the process of how you're doing it, which is, you could say what Alysa Liu was talking about in her experience, like not enjoying the way it was being done. I think what's common is the way we're doing things is from a place of perfectionism, right? So I'm going through The Artist's Way, as I've mentioned. It's by Julia Cameron, and she talks about how perfection is this moving target that we never arrive at. And no artist has ever finished something and gone, that's it. Nothing could be better. That was perfect. There's always something you would adjust. Always. I look back on my class even, and we worked on one scene for 8 weeks. And when we did our final showcase, our final performance, 8 weeks later, once I did it afterwards, I went, now I think I know how to do this. Which is so funny. And Julia Cameron gives an example in the book. I can't remember if it was her own experience or another director's, where they went to the premiere of the film they had directed. And when they saw it, they went, now I know how I should direct this film, which is just so real. And being able to allow both things to exist at once is so freeing. Looking back, so when I look back and, even just talking about this class, I was really sort of holding on. And that class for me taught me a lot more about life than it did about acting. And what I got to see was how my mindset was unsustainable. I was really focused on making it right, on getting it right, on making it good, on making it impressive. And that's when you suck all the joy out. So I signed up for this class again. As I mentioned, I was researching for monologues, and it starts very soon. And I know my goal for this round is I just want to experience joy. I want to experiment with focusing on having fun and seeing what comes up for me. Because I genuinely am curious. If my focus shifts from how good is this to am I enjoying this, what happens to the quality of it? I want to use it as an experiment because I've had this fear that if I focus on how good is this instead of am I having fun, the quality won't be as good. So I'll just try it. I mean, it's 2 months of my life. We'll see what happens. I think that, when we let those things, 32 again, another break. When we let ourselves enjoy things too, it might be a little messy, but we move through that pretty quickly. It's the self-judgment of the messiness that stops us from moving through it. But I'm learning that it is a necessary part of any creative process. the messiness, the beginning. And I know a lot of people who are not willing to even try the thing they probably will love and probably are good at with a little bit of practice. But they're not willing to do it. They're avoiding being a beginner because they're avoiding being bad. But you move through that pretty fast. I don't really think you get stuck there. When you like something, you find ways to get better because you're enjoying it. So for an example, I took a pottery class a couple of years ago. It was 100% not for me, and I knew within the first 20 minutes. But unfortunately for me, I signed up for 6 weeks, but actually I think there was a lesson for it. I finished the class. But I realized that this was 100% not for me. I didn't want to put in the time. The thing is, though, if I look at that class, there were 5 or 6 of us. A couple of people were very clearly better at it than me. It came more naturally to them. And then there were a couple of others who we were kind of on par. Sometimes they'd be able to create something. Other times they would really struggle in class, but they enjoyed it. And I thought in 6 weeks, they're absolutely going to be better. Whereas I'm not, because I don't like this and I'm not going to do another class. So we're drawn to put more time in when we're enjoying things as well. But you have to feel all the feelings that come up from that temporary place of being bad, and it's not comfortable. It can test your self-worth and your self-love if it's low and you're struggling to move through that. So we are all artists in some way. And if you are building a creative life or a life that involves any creativity, which is all of us, it has to be sustainable. Unless you intentionally want to crash and burn, then you go right ahead. But if you do want it to be sustainable, which I think is most of us, then that's not going to come from constantly putting pressure on yourself to make it be something. I think it really does come from joy. And like I said, I am saying this as someone who is in semi-real time discovering this for myself. I'm becoming very aware of my perfectionist tendencies and the clamping down and the control and how I feel like I've been ruining things for myself. And I've actually said that out loud many times. I've said, oh, I'm really good at sucking the joy out of things. And now I'm like, why the fuck do I keep saying that? I keep saying it because I keep doing it, but I don't really want to keep doing that because also this is my life. And I love to try new things. I do not really have a problem with being bad at stuff. I try new things all the time. I had to take probably 15 pole classes until I was like, oh, that was kind of cute. But the first several pole dancing classes, pretty messy, pretty ugly, definitely not sexy, but I enjoyed it. And I was like, oh, this is so much fun. And I can also remember being in those classes with people who were shocked that they couldn't climb up to the pole and spin around down to the bottom the first class. And they didn't come back. I've done lots of things where I've showed up, there's been a group, and people don't keep coming back. And sometimes, it's for a number of reasons, but a lot of times it's from this perfectionist place and it's from not enjoying the process. And to a degree that's come up with the artist way. There have been people who are like, oh, I haven't been doing it perfectly, or I missed this week, or I missed those tasks, or I didn't do my morning pages. And I've always been like, just come, just make it exactly what you want to be. If you can do a little reading before and catch up, that would be nice. But if not, just show up and make it what you want and hop back in. And I think that can be an example for a lot of things. And it's a reminder a lot of us need. So all of that being said, an exercise for at least me, which this podcast is mostly for me. I'm glad people listen, but it's mostly me wanting to express certain things and work them out in a more structured format. And I also feel like because I'm doing this podcast, I am allowing myself to get inspiration from all these places. And I'm also getting to move through a lot of my shit. But an exercise for me, and maybe for you, is if you have the instinct to ask someone else or yourself, is this good? Maybe consider trying something different. try and allow yourself to focus on the process of it and not the end goal. And maybe ask yourself whether you're enjoying this, and then see what happens. Thanks for listening to Caught Off Guard. If you connected with this episode, or even if you didn't, please subscribe and leave a review, but only a nice one. It'll really help more people find the show. You can find us on Instagram at Caught Off Guard Pod. See you next time.